Okay, there we go. Now we can hear. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. Make sure to put a timestamp on it. Hello, welcome. So, today we are going to be doing chapter 17 of Beelzebub's Tales. Welcome back to everyone who's been trying to work through this. I know I have. Once again, if joining for the first time or you want to get into it, there is this website, gurdjieff.thework. If you want to read the exact PDF I'm using, just scroll down to the bottom of the main page, library, primary text. The PDF will be there. All yours. Been trying to work through this. No, sorry, I was just checking that. This sound definitely works. Let me bring my microphone over a little bit and move back to our page. So, where did we leave off? Something crazy. What was the last chapter called? Oh God, I'm dying. Let's just get right into it. So the arch absurd. According to the assertion of Beelzebub, our sun neither lights nor heats. So this chapter is going to be interesting. This chapter is he's going to subvert our expectations. This is what this is all about. He's saying something which is ludicrous, and then as he's saying something ludicrous, he's going to smuggle some real knowledge in, basically. That's the style he seems to be going for. So as we are in a state of shock and, like, what is it? This is wrong. While we're in that state, we won't be able to get the juicy, gooey teachings that he's offering to us. So we have to be aware when he's pulling our leg, and when he's telling us something we should pay attention to. So, in order, my dear Hassien. So this is once again Beelzebub talking, and to his grandson Hassien, that you should meanwhile have an approximate representation also of just how far that function called the instinctive sensing of reality, which is proper to every three-brained being of the whole of our great universe. So all beings in the universe have, instinctually, they know the truth. They may not be able to rationalize it, like if you asked them for truth or what reality is. They may... sorry, I was just adjusting the mic again. They may just be... They may not be able to say what they talk about. They may not be able to say the truth that's within them, but they instinctually know the truth. So if, you try to hoodwink them or pull something over them or tell them that the universe works in a certain way when it doesn't, they instinctively know that that's wrong. So, three-brain being, whole of the great universe, entirely lacking. So, our planet Earth is already entirely lacking in the presences of the three-centered beings breeding on the planet Earth, where we completely lack this sense. And especially in those of the most recent periods. It will be enough to begin with, I think, if I explain to you only about how they understand and explain themselves, the causes why there periodically proceed on their planet those cosmic phenomena which they call daylight, darkness, heat, cold, and so on. I have a sneaking suspicion he's not actually going to tell us this, but he's going to completely sideswipe us. Let's see where this goes. All without exception of the three-brained beings of the planet who have attained the age of a responsible being, and even those many various wiseacrings existing there which they call sciences, are categorically certain that all said phenomena arrive on their planet completely, so to say, ready-made, directly. D-I-R-E-C-T-L-Y, directly from their own sun. So, what is he implying there? He's implying that it's not direct, that there are other forces, or what do you say, temporary bendings and misdirections that happen before actually reaching us. As Mullah Nasser Erdin would say in such cases, no more hokey pokey about it. I say that all the time. What is most peculiar in this case is that, except for certain beings who existed before the second Transapalnian, nailed that one, perturbation, there absolutely no doubt whatever concerning this certainty of theirs has ever as yet crept into one of them. Okay, so first of all, the Transapalnian, yeah, that's right, perturbation, I think he just drops this, he doesn't explain it, and then he mentions it a bunch of other times throughout the book. Pretty sure this is basically like a geological effect that he's just kind of talking about. There's importance about that, but this is one of the things that happens in Atlantis or whatever. So he's basically saying what is most peculiar is that except for certain beings that existed before. So before there were huge tectonic perturbations on our planet, in our very remotest history, there were people that actually doubted their certainty. But nowadays, absolutely none of these human beings doubt their certainty. Which he's basically saying about normies, there are people who, Wittgenstein entered the chat, there are people who shake things up every now and then, they're just not allowed to. Anyway, not only has not a single one of them, having a reason which, though strange, has nevertheless some resemblance to sane logic, ever yet doubted the causes of the said phenomena, but not a single one of them has manifested concerning these cosmic phenomena even that strange special property of their common psyche, which also became proper to the three-brained beings of that planet alone, and which is called to fantasy. So what is he saying here? As a reason that ever yet doubted in causes of the said phenomena, but not a single one of them has manifested concerning even that strange special property of their... Is he saying we've never? I think... Or it has never entered our fantasy. Anyway, having said these last words, Beelzebub, after a little while, with a bitter smile, continued to talk as follows. So he just stopped speaking after that. And then he starts again. You, for instance, so Beelzebub talking to Hassien, have the normal presence of a three-brained being, and within your presence there is, intentionally implanted from without, Oskiano, or as they say there on Earth, education, which is founded on a morality based solely on the commandments and indications of the uni-being himself and the most holy individuals near him. So other beings, when they're trained, their education, their Oskiano, is founded on principles that come from totality. Whereas us, we just source made it up. And yet, if you should chance to be there among them, you would be unable to prevent the process in yourself of the being Nerchit Rogul. Yep, that's a word. That is the process which, again, there on Earth is called irrepressible inner laughter. So it would be so ridiculous you wouldn't be able to not stop laughing. That is to say, you would be unable to restrain yourself from such laughter if in some way or another they were suddenly clearly to sense and understand without any doubt whatever that not only does nothing like light, darkness, heat, and so on come to their planet from their sun itself, but that their supposed source of heat and light is itself almost always freezing cold, like the hairless dog of our highly esteemed Mullah Nasser ad-Din. This is interesting. So, because Gurdjieff talks about ether in this, so he's probably still working off the ether model, which, I don't know, some people have been talking about that recently, and there's some interesting stuff about it. Maybe I'll mention it when he talks some more, if it crosses over. I'll mention it now, just the idea of the ether model. So the ether model is just that there's a substance that saturates the entire universe. So in the ether model, there is no speed of light, so to speak. Light is just what do you call it, like a perturbation in the field. Like, I don't know, like a fiber optic cable, and then you put electricity into it and it changes color. So something changes. It's like imagine if the entire universe is a fiber optic cable, and different parts of it light up at different times. There are different permutations in different places. So basically this is just it. The ether is a giant substance that just saturates and permeates everything. Nowadays they removed ether, but because they don't have a uni substance, to make their calculations work, they just say empty space bends. So, obviously if I put my hand into empty space, I can't bend space itself, but they say when there's enough gravity, space itself bends. They just give space this property, which before it would have been attributed to ether. Space itself doesn't bend. Space is just space, and the ether that permeates all of space is the thing that bends and molds and whatnot. So a lot of occultists worked off of this framework, and this is the framework that they themselves work off. Franz Hartmann, a lot of Rosicrucians talk this way. Maybe even now, and the thing that makes it esoteric is ether isn't just a substance. Your consciousness itself can also interact with ether. And so that's where the woo-woo comes in, hence why science needed to remove it. Just thought I'd lay that in there. Now, in reality, the surface of their source of heat, like that of all the ordinary suns of our great universe, is perhaps more covered with ice. Sorry, on the surface. Is perhaps more covered with ice than the surface of what they call their North Pole. So this is a part of the arch absurd. He's basically saying it's a giant ice ball instead of a giant fireball. He's inverting what we think we know, just to troll us. So let's not get shocked, and let's keep being attentive at what he's saying here. Surely this hearth of heat itself would rather borrow heat, if only a little, from some other source of cosmic substance, then send a part of its own heat to any other planet, especially to that planet which, though it belongs to its system, yet in consequence of the splitting off from it of a whole side became a lopsided monstrosity, and is now already a source of offensive shame for that poor system ores. So I'm not sure what he's referring to here, like as in the sun itself surely would rather borrow heat. I'm not sure if he's talking about entropy or something. When something gets cold, it absorbs heat into it, pulls heat into itself. Like the floor tiles at night when you go to the toilet aren't actually cold. They're just, your feet are just warmer than the tile, and so it's absorbing the heat and you feel cold from that. So he's implying the heat would be absorbed or go to a planet. But why is that planet a lopsided monstrosity? Is he mentioning Earth again? And therefore is Earth an offensive shame for the rest of the universe? Anyway. But do you yourself know, my boy, in general, how and why in the atmosphere of certain planets during, and here we go, trogo-autoegocratic processes, nailed it, there proceed those Kshtatsavakt, Kladzakt, Tainolair, Paischakir. Yep, I got them. First try, not doing it again. And other such phenomena, which your favorites call daylight, darkness, cold, heat, and so on. Okay, and I'm hoping that's also in order. So this is daylight, this is darkness, this is cold, and this is hot. Knowing Gurdjieff, he could just be trolling again, but nonetheless. And so on. Beelzebub asked Hassian. If you don't clearly understand, I shall explain this also to you a little. So Hassian never gets a word in. This is totally, I feel like I know for anyone who's read Plato, this is like him like doing a Socrates troll, where it's like pages and pages of Socrates talking, and then Socrates is like, "Do you understand?" And then, you know, whoever he's talking to is like, "Yes, Socrates." And then Socrates just talks for like another 6 pages. Beelzebub's like, "You get it, right? Good." And then just keeps talking. Anyway, although I have promised to explain to you only later all the fundamental laws of world creation and world maintenance, that would be great, in detail, yet the necessity has here arisen to touch upon, if only briefly, there's a plane going overhead, if only briefly, the questions concerning these cosmic laws without waiting for that special talk I promised. So he's going to teach us something about cosmic laws. Keep in mind, he's dropped he's dropped the idea of crystallizing a Kesdjan body, and that's actually the goal that we should be aiming for. So we're looking for things that may result in the process of, or the fruit of the process of crystallization. This is what we got to keep our eye out for. And this is necessary in order that you may be able better to take in all that we are now talking about, and also in order that what I have already told you may be transubstantiated in you in the right way. It is necessary to say, first of all, that everything in the universe, both the intentionally created and the later automatically arisen. So this is interesting. This is interesting. So there are things that are intentionally created, that are emanated directly from the creator, maybe. And then there are things that automatically arise from processes. Like, you know, you could say a rainbow is what? Is just light refracting through water, and it creates this effect. But there are beings, or should we call them beings? There are existences themselves that are basically effects, that are just bunches of processes overlaying on top of each other. And that gives an arising, a being, something arises out of that, and it's automatic. And so beings like this, when they die for good. They just disperse. But even these, what would you call them, constructed beings, can still do something to coat themselves and actually become permanent. So this is, we're getting somewhere. Anyway, so automatically arisen exists and is maintained exclusively on the basis of what is called the common cosmic trogo-auto-egocratic process. So I'm pretty sure he's going to explain it, maybe just in case. The trogo-auto-egocratic process is the process of reciprocal nourishment. So everything gets nourished by something, and that thing that is nourishing you gets nourished by something else, which gets nourished by something else, which gets nourished by something else, which you happen to nourish through the processes that you go into. Everything is interconnected. Everything feeds on and is feeded by something. And feeds something else. Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. And that process he calls the trogo-auto-egocratic process. And because even to Gurdjieff, planets, stars, solar systems are living, this process doesn't just exist in the ecology of, you know, nature coated around our planet. It's the planets and suns and galaxies themselves also engage in a process of feeding and being fed and giving food. So, the most great common cosmic trogo-auto-egocratic process was actualized by our endless uni-being, when our most great and most holy Sun Absolute had already existed, on which our all-gracious endless creator, written in all caps nonetheless, had and still has the chief place of his existence. This system, which maintains everything arisen and existing, was actualized by our endless creator, all caps, in order that what is called the exchange of substances, or the reciprocal feeding of everything that exists, might proceed in the universe, and thereby that the merciless Heropas, so Heropas is time, or objective time. Let's not forget. So the merciless Heropas might not have its maleficent effects on the Sun Absolute. So objective time and the Sun Absolute are not opposites, but there's some relationship to them, and it seems that the Sun Absolute can be put in danger by objective time or hero pass. And so the Sun Absolute has to do something. What it does is initiate creation. And so via initiating creation, a cosmic harvest, shall we say, something happens, and this basically stops the effects of hero pass. Well, it stops the maleficent effects of hero pass on the Sun Absolute, and everything is perfectly maintained. Makes sense, I guess. This same most great common cosmic trogo auto-egocratic process is actualized always and in everything on the basis of the two fundamental cosmic laws, which the first of which is called the fundamental first degree sacred heptaparaparshinok. Hold on a second. The first. This is interesting. And the second, the fundamental first degree sacred Triamani Kazno. So he's saying heptaparaparshinok is first, and Triamani Kazno is second. This most great is actualized always in everything. So I think he's just talking about the process of which the trogo auto-egocratic process is actualized. So it actualizes along heptaparaparshinok, and then the law of three, Triamani Kazno. Tria Mazikamno. Yes, that's what this word is. The law of three and the law of seven. But I'm pretty sure in world creation chapters later on, or at least the way the fourth way comes down to us, we're taught that the law of three happens first, and then the law of seven is kind of like an unfolding of the law of three. Or even perhaps that they're two laws that are simultaneous. You wouldn't put one above the other. But if you did, you'd put the law of three first. That's interesting, but I guess interesting only to, people who have studied the fourth way. Owing to these two fundamental sacred cosmic laws, there first arise from the substance called ether okrilno. So maybe this is just good old ether, or maybe he's talking about a even more sacred substance. Under certain conditions, what are called crystallizations, and from these crystallizations, but later and also under certain conditions, there are formed various large and small, more or less independent, cosmic definite formations. So planets and whatnot. Maybe even people. It is just within and upon these cosmic definite formations that the process of what are called the involution and evolution. Good, your theosophy is showing. Evolution of the already formed concentrations and also of the said crystallizations take place, of course, also, according to the two said fundamental sacred laws, and all the results obtained from those processes in atmospheres, and further by means of these atmospheres themselves, blend and go for the actualizing of the said exchange of matters, for the purpose of the most common cosmic trogo auto-egocratic process. Trogo auto-egocrat, sorry. That was a paragraph of jargon. Let's try and break this down. There is something in here. It is just within and upon these cosmic definite formations that the process of what we are called the involution and evolution of already formed concentrations and also of the said crystallizations take place. So beings form, and they evolve and de-evolve, basically. They crystallize and they dissolve. But we want a true crystallization. Of course, also according to the two said fundamental sacred laws, and all the results obtained from those processes. So your evolution and involution is processed through the law of seven and the law of three. So fundamentally, the law of three is what evolutes you, and just by being in time, the law of seven, if you're not able to, there's a whole thing about the law of seven, how it has kind of missing stopindas or semitones or whatever, but basically the law of seven is this incomplete law, so you need like other lines. So law of seven, you have seven things, but there's like missing gaps in it. So you need another being, which is another law of 7, basically, to overlap on top of you and fill in the missing semitones. So hence why you can't just create another human out of yourself. You need another human to make a human. So these fundamental processes in the crystallization, but he also talks about processes in the atmospheres. So the atmospheres, mental atmosphere, our auras maybe. And further, by means of these atmospheres themselves, blend and go for the actualizing of the said exchange of matters. Oh, I guess that would be more for planets and stuff. Planets radiate energies. Planets and suns, you know, all the stars you see in the sky, or when you see light from the moon or Jupiter. Jupiter doesn't emit light, it's just reflected from the sun. They're all mirrors that reflect light to and back from each other. But that light is energy that you could say is tinted in a certain way. So light that comes to us from Jupiter is from the sun, but it gets tinted by the energy of Jupiter. Anyway, cosmic ceremonial magic aside, let's keep going. Ether Okrilno is the prime source substance with which the whole universe is filled, and which is the basis for the arising and maintenance of everything existing. Okay, not only is this Ether Okrilno the basis for the arising of all cosmic concentrations without exception. So this is the independent origination, is all because of Ether Okrilno. But there's something else that overlays on top of it, let's not forget. So the Ether Okrilno, has all these processes, but it's interesting, it's not the Ether Okrilno itself that is us. If you think of processes like water, ether is like water. What he's doing here is he's engaging in a kind of a monism. Let me just give a little rant here for a second. If I have a glass in front of me and that's filled with water and ice, and I ask you what's in it, what would you tell me? You would say it's filled with water and ice. Or if I asked you what was floating in the water, you would say ice. And I would say, no, ice isn't floating in the water, water is floating in water. It's just that the ice is water in a different mode, and because it is in a different mode of being, it has different attributes, and we name it something different. So ether is this omnipresent energy, matter, substance that modulates, and when it's in different modes, we call it electricity or we call it matter. And when it overlays on top of itself, it creates. But just like, you can have ice, but what's inside ice? Sometimes you get a full, solid through ice block, but sometimes there's empty things in it. There's bubbles. But what's in the bubbles? There's actually something in the bubbles. There's, oxygen and whatnot. And they found this thing interesting. There's something called sonoluminescence. You can look it up on YouTube. Let me just type it in. Sonoluminescence. There it is. Sonoluminescence is this beautiful thing. Here, I'm not sure. Maybe if I go... No, I can't do it. There we go. See this image here. What they get is... This is a vessel filled with water, and then they get a little bubble in the middle of it. And then they just shoot sound waves at the bubble. And when you do this, it creates light in the water. And it's like, it's a bit of a mystery how it happens. And they have this whole thing with, the sound waves, collapse and create plasma and whatnot. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful if you ever see this. Like in water, a little bubble, if you vibrate and mantralize into it, it creates this light. And humans like 60, 70, 80% water, so blah, 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 create light, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I get you. But this is what is important. Because it's like, the Buddhists say we're empty. There's no fundamental substance. But there is. They just don't want to indicate to it because they're doing basically an extreme form of via negativa. Basically what's going on is like in that ice block, there's a little bit of... there's a little bit of air, there's a little bit of something. But it's not the water, it's something else. So here's the thing, everything in the universe is substance. But within us, there is this emptiness, but that emptiness can be activated and can become the ground that we're then able to stand on. And if we have a permanent ground, well, this is what being awake is, then you can do the work, then you can crystallize things properly, then you can become immortal and actually have agency and whatnot. Then you are something that moves from life to life to life. You're not just something that dies and disperses and evaporates. I'm assuming this is kind of the framework that Gurdjieff uses. Nonetheless, let's keep going from that diversion. Masin Rev, you sold me on this man. I'm studying him. No problem. Oh, I'm glad. Everything in occultism nowadays is making a bit of a resurgence, so it's good to see little Gurji Burji getting a head in, because there's some solid stuff there. I think Gurdjieff Theosophy and Rosicrucianism are like this triumvirate of Western mysticism, or Western esotericism that, if synthesized properly, could lead to a new Gnostic revolution. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's get this. We're already like 30 minutes in, so let's try not to make this too long. Let's get this whole chapter done. So not only is this etherocrylno the basis for the arising of all cosmic concentrations without exception, both large and small, but also all cosmic phenomena in general proceed during some transformation. In this same fundamental cosmic substance, as well as during the processes of the involution and evolution of various crystallizations, or, as your favorites say, of those active elements, which have obtained and still continue to obtain their prime arising from this same fundamental prime source cosmic substance. Bear in mind, so he's saying something, and then as he's saying that, he goes off on a tangent. And this is how Gurdjieff messes with you. Bear in mind here that it is just because of this that the mentioned objective science says that everything without exception in the universe is material. So this isn't our science, this isn't the science of humans, this is objective science. And everything without exception is immaterial. But that doesn't mean Gurdjieff is a materialist. I'm pretty sure later on he plays a little game between materialism and idealism. Oh, sorry. Massini Rev, that's exactly how I interpreted Buddhist emptiness. Buddha just doesn't want to characterize intentionally. Yes, exactly. In fact, even if, like, everyone criticizes the Tibetan Buddhists and say they've gone a little wrong, and says, they're all basically nihilists, but even they will say stuff like, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, there is no eternalism. But then they'll keep going and they'll say, but it's not nothing. So they negate nihilism as well. So there's a secret third thing they're trying to get you to move towards, but they just don't want you to get trapped in any identification. But anyway, let's keep going. You must also know further that only one cosmic crystallization, existing under the name omnipresent Okidanok. Okay, Okidanok, this is important. Okidanok, the ray of creation, the Glorian ray of the Rosicrucians, obtains its prime arising, although it is also crystallized from etherocrylno. So this is interesting. The ray of creation and beings are processed through this ray of creation. So he hasn't gotten into it yet. This is the first time he's mentioning it here. Or has he even mentioned it before? Anyway. But basically there's this huge etherocrylno substance, and out of it, the prime arising, so the first thing that comes out of it, is the Okidanok. So from the three holy sources of the sacred Theomert Malogos. Oh, man. That is from the emanation of the Most Holy Sun Absolute. So the Most Holy Sun Absolute, which he says he describes like a sun, but I don't know, man. It's like something outside of creation that emanates into creation, but something emanates out of the Most Holy Sun Absolute. So if you think of Kabbalah, maybe this Most Holy Sun Absolute is like the Ayin. The Theomert Malogos is like the Ayin Sof. And then the Okidanok is like the lightning flash. You know when you see Kabbalah with the Sephiroth and then you see the lightning flash? That's what the Okidanok is. Everywhere in the universe, this omnipresent Okidanok, or omnipresent active element, takes part in the formation of all both great and small arisings. So great planets, small, insects. And is, in general, the fundamental cause of most of the cosmic phenomena, and in particular of the phenomena proceeding in the atmospheres. In order that you may be able to understand at least approximately concerning this omnipresent Okidenok, also, I must tell you first of all that the second fundamental cosmic law, the sacred Triamazikamno, consists of three independent forces. That is to say, this sacred law manifests in everything without exception, and everywhere in the universe in three separate independent aspects. Okay, once again, we have something else which permeates the entire universe. So these are not things or beings, these are principles that just exist. Or three independent forces, okay. So, and these three aspects exist in the universe under the following denominations. The first, the denomination of the wholly affirming, the second, the wholly denying, and the third, the wholly reconciling. Positive, negative, and equilibrium, or neutral. And this is also why, concerning this sacred law and its three independent forces, the said objective science has among its formulations specially concerned this sacred law the following. Sorry, my dyslexia is just playing with me. A law which always flows into a consequence and becomes the cause of subsequent consequences, and always functions by three independent and quite opposite characteristic manifestations latent within it, properties neither sense nor sensed. What? Okay. And this is also why, concerning this sacred law, its three independent forces, the said objective science has among its formulations so this is a formulation of objective science, specially concerning this sacred law, the following. Okay, so this, a law which always flows into a consequence and becomes the cause of a subsequent consequence, and always functions by three independent and quite opposite characteristic manifestations latent within it, in properties neither seen nor sensed. I feel like there's a mistranslation in here somewhere. Anyway, but basically, he's talking about the origination of cause and effect, first principles, and the law of three always plays a part in cause and effect. So cause and effect is bound by the principle of law and law of the three as well. Latent within it in properties neither seen nor sensed. So hold on a second. Are always functioned by three independent and quite opposite characteristic manifestations. So affirming, denying, and reconciling are all opposites each other. And they are latent within causes and effects, but are neither seen nor sensed by the causes and effects within it. Okay, that's how I'm going to cognize that sentence. So there can be a situation of cause and effect, and it may be a process of the law of three within you. Could be a cause and effect in your life. You know, you have a hard time at work and you come home, and because you're so drained from work, something that your wife says you misinterpret and you get angry. You getting angry is an effect caused by your wife, but there's actually multiple processes going on that are unseen to you because you're unconscious of it, that if you were conscious of, you may be able to do something about. That's how I'm going to cognize that. Okay. Our sacred Theo Mert Malogos, so the first emanation of the Most Holy Son Absolute, also that is the prime... Okay, fucking hell. Sometimes he mentions what they are, and then sometimes he doesn't. So, is the prime emanation of our Most Holy Son Absolute, acquires just this same lawfulness as its prime arising. Okay. So even the Theo Mert Malogos, when it arises, has within it a law of the three. So this is kind of like the first thing that arises is the three gunas, you know, out of Brahman, or out of the Absolute, whatever. Three gunas arise. But the three gunas themselves are outside of creation. But even within creation, there are still kind of three primary forces that act and react. So, and during its further actualizations, gives results in accordance with it. And so, my boy, the omnipresent Okidanok obtains its prime arising in space outside of the most holy sun, absolute itself, from the blending of these three independent forces into one. And during its further involutions, it is correspondingly changed in respect of what is called the vivifyingness of vibrations. So hold on a second. So from the blending of these three independent forces into one, and during its further involutions, the vivifyingness of vibrations, it is according to its passage through what are called the stopindas or gravity centers of the fundamental common cosmic sacred heptapara Parshanok. Okay, so does that mean it gets less vivified and vibrates less, or it vibrates differently at the very least? This is like tones going through an octave. Yeah, he mentions the heptapara Parshanok, which is basically music theory, so that must be what he means by that. The different vibrations give it a different vivifyingness. I guess, sonoluminescence here. Different vibrations will make this light. It's so beautiful. If you ever are able to do the experiment, or just look it up online, you can just kind of fall into a rabbit hole. Sonoluminescence. I repeat, among the number of other already definite cosmic crystallizations, the omnipresent Okidanok unfailingly always participates in both large and small cosmic formations. Wherever and under whatever external surrounding conditions they may arise in the universe. So, I repeat, among the number of other already definite cosmic crystallizations, I guess planets and people, the omnipresent Okidanok unfailingly always participates in both large and small. Yeah? What about it? And under whatever external surrounding conditions. So the external surrounding conditions shouldn't matter. All beings have this potential to crystallize, is what he's getting at. This common cosmic unique crystallization or active element has several peculiarities proper to this element alone. And it is chiefly owing to these peculiarities proper to it that the majority of cosmic phenomena proceed, including, among other things, the said phenomena that take place in the atmosphere of certain planets. Lightning? What else happens in our atmosphere? I guess rain, clouds, crystallizations, snow. A lot happens. Of these peculiarities proper to the omnipresent active element alone, there are several, but it is enough for the theme of our talk if we become acquainted just with two of them. Thank God. The first peculiarity is that when a new cosmic unit is being concentrated, then the omnipresent active element does not blend as a whole within such a new arising, nor is it transformed as a whole in any definite corresponding place, as happens with every other cosmic crystallization in all the said cosmic formations. But immediately on entering as a whole into any cosmic unit, there immediately occurs in it what is called Jartklom? Yep, that is to say, it is dispersed into three fundamental sources from which it obtained its prime arising. And only then do these sources each separately give the beginning of an independent concentration of three separate corresponding formations within the given cosmic unit. Jesus Christ. This is kind of sounding like, when a person is created, it's an overlaying of forces, but then in Tibetan Buddhism and stuff, when someone dies, when reincarnation or when a master returns who has attained, there is like a threefold emanation: the body, the word, and the mind of the master, or the voice, the speech. No, yeah, that's the word. The body, the word, and the mind, yeah. The body, the word, and the mind of the master then become their own prime arisings, and they become their own beings. That's why you get Tibetan masters that are like, oh, this is a reincarnation of, this Rinpoche. But then there's like two guys that are the same reincarnation of the one guy, but they're both alive at the same time. They're like, how can this happen? And there's something to do with that. This is just given me that vibe. I'm not sure if that's what he's actually talking about here. Okay. And in this way, the omnipresent active element actualizes at the outset in every such new arising the sources for the possible manifestation of its own sacred lore of Triamazikamna. Wait a second. The sources of the possible manifestation of its own sacred lore. So we're created. So I just spat there all over my microphone. We are created via the law of free. The law of free. The law of three. But what a part of the work is to actualize or manifest the law of three within us. So because we ourselves are like a vessel, and we then create the world within us. As there is a solar system outside of us, we must create a solar system within us. A constellation within us. We must become a constellation. And a part of this is to do with manifestation of its own sacred law of Triamazikamna. Very interesting. It must without fail be noticed also that in every cosmic formation the said separated sources, both for the perception and for the further utilization of this property of the omnipresent active element for the purpose of the corresponding actualizing, exist and continue to have the possibility of functioning as long as the given cosmic unit exists. So I'm like getting rope-a-doped right now. I'm just gonna nod and I'm gonna move on from that this paragraph. And only after the said cosmic unit has been completely destroyed do these holy sources of the sacred Triamazikamna localized in the omnipresent active element Okidanok reblend, and they are again transformed into Okidanok, but having now another quality of vivifyingness of vibrations. Okay. So this is the work you do, even if it's uncompleted, even if you don't reach immortality and you don't become an enlightened master, the work you do, your experiences in life, actually go back into the thing you arose from and change it. So you can actually change God by living your life. As regards the second peculiarity of the omnipresent Okidanok, equally proper to it alone, and which it is also necessary for us to elucidate just now for the given theme of our talk, you will be able to understand about that only if you know something concerning one fundamental cosmic second-degree law existing in the universe under the denomination of sacred... Okay, here we go again. A-I-E-E-O-I-U-A. So your lips never touch with that because there's just all vowels. The sacred A-E-O-U-A. Okay, let's go. And this sacred cosmic law is that is he going to mention what that is? Oh, yeah, he does later on. Okay, I just saw it down here. And this cosmic law is that there proceeds within every arising, large and small, when in direct touch with the emanations either of the Sun Absolute itself or of any other sun, what is called remorse. That is, a process when every part that has arisen from the results of any one holy source of the sacred Triamazikamna, as it were, revolts and criticizes the former unbecoming perceptions and the manifestations at the moment of another part of its whole. A part obtained from the results of another holy source of the same fundamental sacred cosmic law of the Triamazikamna. So this is very interesting. So what is remorse? Remorse is where an individual being that is together breaks apart temporarily and one part criticizes another part. I guess this allows for change. Otherwise, if you weren't able to do that, if you weren't able to break a part, then you can't change the part, and then the machine just stays broken. But remorse is not a negative emotion. Remorse is a cosmic mercy. It's a breaking apart that allows us to restore correct functions into dysfunctional parts of our being. Whew. And this sacred process, or remorse, always proceeds with the omnipresent active element Okidanok. Okidanok also. Swear this translation has a little tidbits here and there that I'm kind of questioning. The peculiarity of this latter during this sacred process is that while the direct action either of the sacred Theo Mert Malogos or the emanation of any ordinary sun is round about the whole of its presence, this active element is dispersed into its 3' parts, which then exist almost independently, and when the said direct action ceases, these parts blend again and then continue to exist as a whole. I think that's saying what I just said. I think. Here you might as well, I think, be told, by the way, about an interesting fact I noticed which occurred in the history of their existence concerning the strangeness of the psyche of the ordinary 3-brained beings of that planet, which has taken your fancy in respect of what they call their scientific speculations. And that is that during the period of many-centuried observation and study of their psyche, I had occasion to constate several times that though science appeared among them almost from the very beginning of their arising, and it may be said periodically, like everything else, rose to a more or less high degree of perfection, and that during these and other periods many millions of 3-brained beings called their scientists must have arisen and been again destroyed. Yet, with the single exception of a certain Chinese man named Chun Kil Tses, true story, sounds legit, about whom I shall tell you later in detail. This is interesting, though. He could have said Persian, he could have said Sufi, he could have taken any race, he could have said a European race, he could have said Atlantean, but he says a Chinese man figured it all out. So, what's in China? Confucianism, Taoism. Maybe he's giving some kind of passing respect to Taoism in some way, or Taoist alchemy. About whom I shall tell you later in detail. You better. Not once has the thought entered the head of a single one of them there that between these two cosmic phenomena, which they call emanation and radiation, so emanation and radiation are two different cosmic phenomena apparently, there is any difference whatever. Not a single one of those, so this Chinese man realized there was a difference between emanation and radiation. Not a single, so we emanate, but we ourselves then radiate. We are emanations that radiate. At the moment we don't radiate, but we need to radiate. That's what he realized. Not a single one of those scientists has ever thought that the difference between these two cosmic processes is just about the same as that which the highly esteemed Mullah Nasser ad-Din once expressed in the following words. They are as much alike as the beard of the famous English Shakespeare and the no less famous French Armagnac. Armagnac, less famous French Armagnac. I'm pretty sure, is there a guy called that? Because Armagnac is like cognac. It's a drink, I'm pretty sure. So this is interesting. Because what is he saying here? What's two things that are furthest apart? The beard of an Englishman and French cognac? Or is he saying that English gentlemen drink French cognac and it gets dropped in their beard and they're the same? So it's this thing where he's giving an expression emphatically saying it's obvious, but the expression itself is vague. And so in saying that, is he saying both? That they are both different and the same? Is he trolling us? Is this a troll? A sleight of hand? This is definitely arch absurd. I'm going to be remembering this one for a while. For the further clarification of the phenomena taking place in the atmospheres and concerning the omnipresent active element in general, you must know. And remember this also. That during the period... Sorry, I just got a notification from my wife. During the periods when, owing to the sacred process, Jart Klom proceeds in the Okidanok. Oh my friggin' god. Okay, so hold on. The omnipresent active element in general, you must remember that during the periods when, owing to sacred processes of remorse, this breaking apart proceeds in the Okidanok itself, then there is temporarily released from it the proportion of the pure that is absolutely unblended ether akrilno, which unfailingly enters into all cosmic formations. So the Okidanok gaslights itself into spewing pure ether, like ejaculating pure ether just over everything. There serves, as it were, for the connecting of all the active elements of these formations, and afterwards, when its three fundamental parts reblend, then the said proportion of ether akrilno is re-established. I guess then out of the ether beings arise, and then the beings live, exist, and die, and their atmospheres, their experiences in their atmospheres then change the vivifyingness of the ether, which then is absorbed back into the Okidanok, and then the Okidanok then is absorbed back into the Theomurkma Logos, which then is contemplated by His Most Holy Son, Absolute. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this heavenly bureaucracy he's building up. Now, it is necessary to touch also, of course, again, only briefly, on another question. Namely, what relation the omnipresent active element Okidanok has to the common presence of beings of every kind, and what are the cosmic results actualized owing to it? That's a great question. It is chiefly necessary to touch upon this question because you will then have still another very striking and illuminating fact for the better understanding of the difference between the various brain systems of beings, namely the systems called one-brained, two-brained, and three-brained. So we are three-brained beings ourselves. Okay, this is going to be important actually, because we basically have three different functions, which are sometimes in a state of imbalance most of the time, but we can assemble ourselves and be an equilibrated being. We can be the fourth man, the balanced man. So any talk on the three, and the balanced man is the one who does the work, really. All the other men do work in an improper way, and so they don't fully crystallize, or they don't crystallize properly. Only the balanced man can strike his being on all sides at once. So he's talking about three brains now. Let's pay attention. Let's see what's going on. Know first that in general, every such cosmic formation called brain receives its formation from those crystallizations, the affirming source for whose arising, according to the sacred Triam Mazikamno, is one or another of the corresponding holy forces of the fundamental sacred Triam Mazikamno. Yep, did he just say two things over and over again? Source for whose arising according is one or the other of the corresponding holy forces. That in general, every such cosmic formation called a brain receives its form... Oh, okay, so yep. So affirming, denying, and reconciling. So one of the brains will be affirming, one will be denying, and one will be reconciling, is what he's saying. Bruh. Holy forces, okay. Localized in the omnipresent Okidanok, and the further actualizing of the same holy forces proceed by means of the presences of the beings, just through those localizations. Okay. I shall sometime in the future specifically explain to you about the process itself of the arising of these corresponding being brains. I'm regretting doing this live stream journey right now. Oh my god, I'm dying. Ugh. In the presences of beings. But meanwhile, let us talk through, take a shot every time I want to just die while reading this. Though not in detail, about the results the omnipresent Okidanok actualizes by means of these being brains. The omnipresent active element Okidanok enters into the presences of beings through all the three kinds of being food. And this process, because as I have already told you, this same Okidanok obligatorily participates in the formation of all kinds of products, which serve as all three being foods, and is always, so the three being foods are normal human food, air is a food in and of itself, and impressions. So seeing things, absorbing stories, experiences, impressions themselves are food. So three being foods, and is always contained in the presence of these products. And so, my boy, you sound like you're ending the chapter, but I don't think you are. The chief peculiarity of the omnipresent Okidanok in the given case is that the process of jot-clom, I feel like I'm going to jot-clom my pants in a second, proceeds in it within the presence of every being. So every being has a breaking apart at one point or another. Also, but not from being in contact with the emanations of any large cosmic concentration, but the factors for this process in the presences of... And also, I'm not quite sure if... Is this the breaking apart or the assembling of said parts? Anyway. Factors for this process in the presences of beings are either the results of the conscious processes of part-dolg duty. Park-dolg duty, which is the duty that beings have to feed the moon. That is Askokan. On the part of the beings themselves, about which processes I shall also explain to you in detail later, or of that process of great nature herself, which exists in the universe under the name, let's fucking do this, Kirk-Kul-Nun-Narnian actualization, got it in one, which process means the obtaining of the required totality of vibrations by adaptation. That's an interesting statement. So you require the totality of vibrations needed by adaptation. Your adaptability is what's important. Adaptability to situations, not being so loose, like, you know, you just got to go with the flow, man, and then only dead fish go with the stream, but also not so tight that nothing can move you and then you just eventually break. It's your adaptability to the situations that is your key. This later process proceeds in beings absolutely without the participation of their consciousness. This latter process proceeds in beings absolutely without the participation of their process. Luna Lovelight says, love hearts, or smiley face with love hearts. Thank you, Luna. You're going to help me get through this. In both cases, when Okidanok enters into the presence of a being and the process of Jat-Klom proceeds in it, then each of its fundamental parts blends with those perceptions, which correspond with it according to what is called kindred vibrations, and which are present in the being at the moment. And further, these parts are concentrated upon the corresponding localization that is upon the corresponding brain. Okay, I actually think I'm understanding what he's talking about. He's just talking about life, and the Okidanok creates life, and life radiates or moves, you know, makes sound, you know, you see things, and other things see you, and so when another thing sees you, that's a kindred vibration, an impression, but it's processed in corresponding beings in the correct center. So if I'm yelling at you, you're not going to intellectualize that. It's going to go to your emotional center. If I'm telling or if Luna Lovelight says, sends me a love heart, that's going to go to my emotional center, not to my intellectual center. Or if you see people running, then what is evoked in you? Sometimes you don't even think. It's just like there's a tendency to start running as well. Like, oh, got to run as well. Like you're in a mall and everyone starts running. You just start running, man. You see that impression come into you, it strikes your motor brain, and you start running. So I think kindred vibrations there is the term that all of a sudden snapped everything together in my mind. And these blendings are called being impulsactory. Okay, I guess that's what being impulsactory is what kindred vibrations are? Or blendings. Yeah, the blendings of the kindred vibrations. And then it blends within you and creates a perception and experience inside you internally. Luna Love and Light says, laughing while crying face. I'm glad you're finding this funny. I'm glad you're enjoying my suffering, Luna. It is necessary to notice further that these localizations or brains in beings serve not only as apparatuses for the transformation of corresponding cosmic substances, for the purposes of the most great common cosmic trogo auto egocrat, but also as the means for beings whereby their conscious self-perfecting is possible. There we go. It is necessary to notice further that these localizations or brains in beings serve not only as apparatuses for the transforming of corresponding cosmic substances. So this is, he'll talk, I'm not sure if he talks about hydrogens in this, but his hydrogen table is coming to mind when he's talking about this. Our brains take in the three being foods and transform them into different, what do you call it, densities of hydrogens. Corresponding to cosmic substance for the purposes, and why do we do this? To keep ourselves alive, but we're all interconnected, so really it's for the most great common cosmic trogo auto egocratic process. But also as the means for beings whereby their conscious self-perfecting is possible. So there's something about our three brains, there's something about the three foods that we absorb, food, breath, and impressions, that if we can rejig somewhere in there with some technique, this, in other words, it's not an automatic process, it's then a willed or conscious process, we can then begin a process of self-perfecting. I'm getting it. This latter aim depends upon the quality of the presence of the being impulsacari. Okay. So how good we are at blending, mixing. How good we are at internal alchemy, basically. And our internal alchemy isn't just our energies, but our psychic forces, our emotions, our intellect, our mind, our spirit, our sexual energies, all concentrated. Anyway, as is otherwise said, deposited upon the said corresponding being brains. Alright. Concerning the qualities of being impulsacri, there is among the direct commandments of our all-embracing endlessness, that is God, capital G God, even a special commandment which is very strictly carried out by all three brained beings of our great universe, and which is expressed in the following words: always guard against such perceptions as may soil the purity of your brains. So, no more YouTube, I get. No, I'm kidding. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Become a member. Anyway, purity of your brains. God, what perception would soil the purity of your brain, though? Really, don't we need to confront everything in the end? I think maybe just even like impressions that are just junk impressions, maybe, because then it just fills up your brain. Anyway, Three-brained beings have the possibility, personally, to perfect themselves, because in them there are localized three centers of their common presence, or three brains, upon which afterwards, when the process of Jat Klom proceeds in the omnipresent Okidanok, the three holy forces of the sacred Triya Mazikamno are deposited and acquire the possibility for their further, this time independent actualizings. Three-brained beings have the possibility. So I'm reading just the first part again, because the second part is just jargon, or starts to become jargon. But the first part's important. Three-brained beings have the possibility, personally, to perfect themselves. That's important, because in them there are localized three centers of their common presence, or three brains. So because we have three brains, a one-brained or a two-brained being may not be able to do this. So the process Jat Klom proceeds in the omnipresent Okidanok. So when it proceeds, so that's when the Okidanok does Jat Klom, it spews out pure ether. The three holy forces of the sacred Triya Mazikamno are deposited and acquire the possibility for their further, this time independent actualizing. Okay. Seems like he's dodging around there. Just in this is the point that the beings having this three-brained system can, by the conscious and intentional fulfilling of being Park-Dole duty, utilize from this process of Jat Klom in the omnipresent Okidanok its three holy forces for their own presences and bring their presences to what is called, let's go, Sekron ul Anzaknian state. Sekrunolanzaknian states. That is to say, they can become such individuals as have their own sacred law of Triya Mazikamno. So that's what we want to do. Let's get into this state, bros. Let's do it. We're all going to make it. We're all going to make it. Luna says, indeed. And thereby the possibility of consciously taking in and coating in their common presence all that holy, which incidentally also aids the actualizing of the functioning of these cosmic units of objective divine reason. Objective divine reason is different from instinctual perception of truth. I think Luna's just friggin' spanning random emojis now. Oh no, there's a little paper with a cross through it, so I think it's an emoji I can't access. But there's another emoji next to it, which is like a trophy, so I think she's liking it. But the great terror of it, my boy, lies just in this, that although in those three-brained beings who have interested you and who breed on the planet Earth, there are present in them, up to the time of their complete destruction, these three independent localizations, or three being brains, through which separately all the three holy forces of the sacred Triya Mazikamno, which they might also utilize for their own self-perfecting, are transformed and go for further corresponding actualizations. Yet, chiefly on account of the irregular conditions of ordinary being existence established by themselves, these possibilities beat their wings in vain. So each of our brains has its, not just is its main thing, like, affirming, denying, reconciling, but within the three brain itself, it has the three, but just one actualizes over the other three. But these possibilities that we have don't actually actualize. He's almost making it sound like, as you come into being, these three brains kind of develop, and you develop the kind of three parts of yourself. And then if you don't actually actualize when you die, those three parts actually kind of are psychic processes that continue and then continue to incarnate. And so after you die, three people are born in the world. One who was kind of your motor brain, so just a more motor instinctual person, one who is more emotional, and one who is more intellectual, who has your intellectual proclivities. But then, because of conditions in their lives, they will all be different personalities, and heck, they may even develop different parts of themselves. And it makes me wonder, if this is true, then can someone kind of be overlaid with different forces? Like, can you get the motor part of a person, the emotional part of another person, and the intellectual part of a third person, all kind of incarnating in one person at the same time, and you just get this? I guess no, because of the law of familiarity and the kindred likeness. Very interesting. Anyway, I'm just full speculating here for fun. It is interesting to note that the said being brains are found in the same parts of the planetary body of these three-brained beings who arise on the planet Earth as in us. Namely, 1. The brain predetermined by great nature for the... So he's now describing something, and you remember, Beelzebub himself has horns and hooves and a tail, and he's talking to Hasyun, who also looks like this. So he says they look, they have their brains just like we do. 1. The brain predetermined by great nature for the concentration and further actualizing of the first holy force of the sacred tree Mazikamno, called holy affirming, is localized and found in the head. 2. The second brain, which transforms and crystallizes the second holy force of the sacred tree Mazikamno, namely the holy denying, is placed in their common presences also, as in us, along the whole of their back in what is called the spinal column. So these demon-looking beings that Beelzebub is all have brains and spinal columns at least. 3. But as regards the place of concentration and source for the further manifestation of the third holy force of the sacred tree Mazikamno, namely the holy reconciling, the exterior form of this being brain in the three-brained beings, there bears no resemblance whatever to ours. Bruh. Yes, Lunar, it is trippy. So, this is interesting. This is really interesting. So basically, in other three-brained beings, creatures in the universe, they have this third center, whereas we don't. Like, maybe for them it was a tail, or for another set of beings, like the crow beings on Saturn, maybe it's their wings is their third organ, their extra organ which has their third brain in it. But we don't have one, so it's dispersed over our body. So, and this is interesting because we have an affirming and a denying part in us, but the part that reconciles those two so that we can actually do something is dispersed. That energy is dispersed, so reconciliation never happens, and we're in this constant conflict with ourselves. Very interesting. It must be remarked that in the primordial three-brained beings there, this said being brain was localized in the same part of their planetary body as in us, so I guess the tail, and had an exterior form exactly similar to our own. But for many reasons, which you will be able to understand for yourself during the course of my further talks, great nature was compelled little by little to regenerate this brain, and to give it the form which it now has in the contemporary beings. This being brain in the contemporary three-brained beings, there is not localized in one common mass, so it's not localized, it's just dispersed throughout us, as is proper to the presence of all the other three-brained beings of our great universe, but is localized in parts according to what is called specific functioning. And each such part is localized in a different place of their whole planetary body. Okay? But although in its exterior form this being center of theirs has now variously placed concentrations, this is interesting, is he talking about chakras here? I feel like he's going to talk about chakras in a veiled sense. Nevertheless, all its separating functions are correspondingly connected with each other, so that the sum total of these scattered parts can function exactly as in general in its proper for it to function. Function exactly as in general it is proper for it to function. Okay? They themselves call these separate localizations in their common presence nerve nodes. Ooh. So that nerve nodes, I think he's talking about chakras, bro. I think he's talking about chakras. It is interesting to notice that most of the separate parts of these being brain are localized in them, just in that place of their planetary body where such a normal being brain should be, namely in the region of their breast, and the totality of these nerve nodes in their breast they call the solar plexus. Very interesting. Maybe it's more closer to something like the Dantian system. It's very interesting, because he did mention China. He mentioned China. China. These arch physicists, they're not good people. They're bad people. We got to go to China. Learn some Taoist Nigang. Okay. So the solar plexus, he's putting a great importance on the solar plexus. Not in all forms of Taoist Qigong or alchemy. So the Dantian is usually below the navel, below the belly button. In some they place it, well, there's 3 Dantians. There's the lower, the upper, and the lower, the middle, and the upper. So usually the lower is below the belly button, and then the upper one is in the chest where the heart is. But sometimes they put the lower one like at the perineum, like literally, between your anus and your sex organs. And then the next one up, they put at the solar plexus. So there's something special about the solar plexus. And solar plexus is a point of projection as well. Like Franz Barden in his book on hermetics talks about, projecting energy out of the hands, or you can do it out of your solar plexus. So there's something interesting here. Blessing someone over the solar plexus. It's that center of receiving and telepathy. So, my boy, the process of Jat Klom in the omnipresent Okidanok proceeds in the presence of each of these favorites of yours, and in them also. All its 3 holy forces are blended independently with other cosmic crystallizations and go for the corresponding actualizations. But as chiefly owing to the already mentioned abnormal conditions of being existence gradually established by themselves, they have entirely ceased to fulfill being Park Dolg duty. Then in consequence of this, none of those holy sources of I think my dog just farted. Of everything existing, with the exception of the denying source alone. So everything kind of just bounces off, because we don't fulfill being parked or duty, we become unbalanced, and the only thing that really exerts itself is denying source. So hence why you just get people who are like skeptics, who are like, yeah, it's probably not going to work, oh, I tried, it didn't work. We just deny everything. Is transubstantiated for their own presence as very interesting. The crystallizations arising in their presences from the first and from the third holy forces go almost entirely for the service only of the common cosmic trogo auto-egocratic process, while for the coating of their own presences there are only the crystallizations of the second part of the omnipresent Okidanok, namely of the holy denying. And hence it is that the majority of them remain with the presences consisting of the planetary body alone, and thus are for themselves destroyed forever. So, if you simp for the holy denying force, you die. And you get annihilated. Food for the moon. Sorry, bruh. Should have tried. As regards all the peculiarities proper to the omnipresent, everywhere penetrating active element Okidanok alone, and also as regards the further results which these peculiarities actualize, you will have a complete representation of them only after I shall have explained to you in more or less detail, as I have already promised, about the fundamental laws of world creation and world maintenance. But meanwhile, I shall tell you about those elucidating experiments concerning this omnipresent cosmic crystallization at which I was personally present. Okay, we're getting to the end, guys, but I must tell you that I was an eyewitness of these said elucidating experiments, not on that planet Earth which has taken your fancy, nor did your favorites make them, but on the planet Saturn, where they were made by that 3-brained being, who during almost the whole period of my exile in that solar system was my real friend, above whom I recently promised to tell you a little more in detail. Chapter 18, Arch Preposterous. Hour and a half of me dying. I think I definitely only have that. That's all I've got in me, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. Hope that wasn't... I hope it wasn't boring. I'm not sure about comprehensible, but at least it wasn't boring, hopefully. Anyway, let's continue again next week. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Leave a like. Drop a super chat. Become a member if you can. Or, I don't know, give a donation in the Ko-fi account via PayPal. Something. Oh my god. My brain is destroyed. Brain destroyed. Gurge if you troll. Anyway. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.